Okay.
And Steve,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. So now my microphone is working. So I'm turning my head to
Hi, Armin.
the camera. So it should work now. And as I've seen, you are understanding myself. So I just had to set my microphone settings and restart Zoom. Now it's working. It's the first time using Zoom here at home, and it seems to work.
Well, I think meanwhile we all have the connection of Team, Google, and Zoom. Well, everybody has a full set of new applications on their computer. Okay, I'm going to share with all of you just a few slides. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. Just you know, as a focus lead for the HR, lead for the HR focus group within SAPience, I would like to welcome you on the second virtual masterclass of this year. We had one basically, and there are two more to come. So we had one last week, was a customer success story presented by Alnex. Today, it's completely different audience, but I assume you're all very much into Belgian payroll and you want to learn what has been changed and what is coming up in the next couple of months. Next week, same time, same place, we have another customer success story where the Vrije Universiteit Brussels will share with us their journey to implementation of SuccessFactors. And within 2 weeks, again, Tuesday, 1:30 to 2:30, SAP will share a little bit more about how employee experience management can improve the internal customer satisfaction. So please, you know, check the SAPience website and make sure you have all the sessions in your agenda. So we look forward to definitely see you next week and the week after. Some practical rules. I mean, I don't need to mention it. I see everybody is already on mute. Thank you for that. If you have a question, you know, there's a chat box. Just type your question in the chat box and, you know, we will pick them up after the presentation, or if Rutger at a certain moment sees that something is really important to pick up immediately, he can do so. I hope you will all enjoy the presentation and we'll all learn something valuable for our own system. Very important to tell you, I mean, this session is recorded. I hope nobody has a problem with it. The purpose is simply that we can share it afterwards on the SAPience website. Okay, Rutger, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to ask you to take over. Thank you very much.
Let me share. Okay. Can you all see this now? My screen? Can you see my shared screen?
Yes, sorry, yes, I'm on mute. Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone. This is the first chance we've had in quite a long time to give you an update on the latest changes in SAP. So what we decided to do is in this meeting go through some of the larger changes in the since last masterclass, and then in the future we can focus more on some upcoming things. So let's start. So what I would like to cover today is the starting a bit in order of how old things, how long ago things have been implemented. Start with the mobility budget and then the voluntary additional pension in combination with the capital formation, a second pension pillar in the DMFA implementation, the FinProf exemption checks, a implementation recently done for the foreign company tax, and then some of the COVID-19 changes we implemented recently. These are not so large, but I thought they were relevant in the current climate. So we added those to the presentation as well. So to start with the mobility budget, don't want to, oh, can you only see, okay, yeah. So the mobility budget for this in Infotype 442, we created a new subtype, MOBB. The calculation for the mobility budget company cars is the same as it used to be in the for the normal company cars, but the output from the calculation is different, so it can be reported separately in the DMFA. For this implementation, there was not only a part to implement for the company car of the mobility budget, but also we need to declare the total amount of mobility budget in the DMFA on a yearly basis. So once a year, this needs to be declared, and also we have to declare the contribution on the total amount of mobility budget. So we created 3 wage types for this. Model wage type M10I, which is a model wage type that can be used or copied to declare or to calculate the total amount of mobility budget. From this amount, we then calculate the amount of contribution. We add this to the accumulation wage type /10I, and from this the contribution is calculated in the /30I. This animation wasn't supposed to, it was just supposed to be one screen. So for this we created in the T599FW a new wage type group, MOBB, and in this we map the M, as you can see here, the M10I with the amount in the rate that's stored in the rate, and this will be declared in the DMFA field for the total amount of budget. The amount field from the M10I is stored in the /10I for contribution. This is the amount of mobility budget that has not been used for a company car or for a different element of the mobility budget, and is paid out in cash, and this amount then needs to be needs to have a contribution paid on this. Then when we were implementing this, we came to, well, we already realized for a while we have a limited number of accumulation classes left, and because this is a fairly self-standing functionality, we decided not to use one of the outstanding remaining accumulation classes for this. So we created a new payroll operation, the BWSG. With this payroll operation, it's currently used in payroll calculation rule B027. With this operation, you can accumulate certain wage types into a different wage type. So if you can look here, you can see in this rule we have BWSG, that's the operation, and then the C for accumulate, and then the /10I. This means we are going to accumulate to the /10I, and the thing we accumulate in this field is an amount that comes from the T5F9 and FW. I'm going to try and show that quickly in SAP. So, can you see my SAP screen? If not, let me know. I'm assuming...
Yes, we can, Rutger.
FW. FW. So we created a new sub-application, CUML, and in here you can see now this is the line we use for the mobility budget. We have our model wage type with the amount being stored in the /10i. So each call of the operation that we have is only reading this table for the wage type group that is mentioned here. So going back to the slide. So as you can see here, you see here underneath, there are multiple ones. It loops over the whole IT, and for each wage type in the IT, it looks to see if the wage type is mapped to this particular wage type group. If it is, then the output wage type from this operation will be this wage type. So that's a new operation we created, and as you can see already from the table, there are more wage types in here. It is by now also used for the foreign company tax solution, and also for the foreign company tax, these wage types all, and then at the bottom here for the voluntary additional pension, it's also used. So back to the presentation. Then the capital formation. This is a large implementation compared to the mobility budget. I've mentioned here the different SAP notes that we have released for this. The capital formation is a type, InfoType 3440. This InfoType can be used to make gross payment instructions to take bank account. So it's a little bit like InfoType 11. InfoType 11, you can make one-off payments as well to to bank account and deducting the amount from the employee. The difference between this and that one is that InfoType 11 you can only use for net payments. This solution actually allows you to make a gross instruction, make certain calculations, customer-specific calculations. In the meantime, the amount changes, and as in the end, the amount you've calculated in the payroll will be paid to the bank account details that you have stored in the InfoType 3440. The reason we implemented this is in the first instance for the voluntary additional pension, but uses for themselves, they can use this and also for their own purposes. So what does it contain? This is the screen of the InfoType. You have a contract, you have a wage type, an amount, and an asset type. The payment data is currently not being utilized here, and then here at the bottom you see the payee data, so the bank account details and the payee key. So multiple contract part, that field is used to allow you to have multiple records of the same type of asset type in the same month. So for instance, let's take the voluntary additional pension. You can have a person that decides to make 2 different payments to 2 separate bank accounts in the same month. If you want to do that, you set the second one for contract number 2. It's basically a serial number. And then the wage type remains the same, the asset type remains the same, and the amount you can choose for both. Important to note, the amount we store in this field is not necessarily the amount that we pay. The amount that's stored in here is the gross amount that we start processing, but in the payroll, adjustments to this amount. There can be, for instance, for the pension, voluntary additional pension, it can be that there is a certain limit. So you only want to pay 1/12 of the total amount you can per year, or the way we've implemented it, per year there is a maximum you can pay with 10% tax reduction. Once you've reached that amount, you could say, I cap the amount. So this is the reason this is the way we've implemented a voluntary additional pension. But in general, for the capital formation, so not exclusively voluntary additional pension, but for the capital formation solution, the amount that comes out of this info type will be stored in the wage type specified here, and then in payroll it is up to the customer to then make sure this amount is stored in a wage type /540, and from that the payment process will take over again. So how is this done? The gross generation of the payroll in the payroll subschema BFC0. In there we have a payroll function BCAPF with parameter GR for gross. This reads the info type, stores the output wage type with the specified amount in a wage type that you specify in the info type as well, and then it stores this wage type with a V0 split, variable split, and the V0 split is stored in the table V0. And this link in the V0 is this is the link between the amount and the wage type in the payroll, in the IT table, and the record in the type. After a couple of after you do some calculations, the idea is that the amount is stored in the /540 amount to be paid, and then the payroll function BCAPF without a parameter, then with the calculation rule, I'll show it in a minute, will then create a payment record in the BT and the wage type /541. This amount can then be paid with the normal payment programs that are also used for the normal salary. For this, we also needed to make an extension of the operations amount, rate, and num. There's a new parameter D, a new option. This has been added to be able to take into account the V0 split in this operation, because up to now that wasn't possible. So let's briefly have a look at SAP. I will quickly run the payroll for an employee. So if we look at here, we have a new subschema, capital formation. In the capital formation subschema, we have the call of the payroll function reading the info type. It reads the info type and it stores in the payroll. The wage type is M613, and here at the bottom we have a wage type M613 with a variable split A01, and here in the table V0 we have A01 storing basically the key of the info type record that we've processed. Whenever you process this wage type, it is important you make sure that this V0 split is not lost, otherwise the payment at the end cannot happen. So this wage type has been created for the voluntary additional pension. Here we have a couple of calculation rules in relation to the voluntary additional pension. I don't want to go too much into the detail of that solution, the calculation rules, but basically we create the /P wage types to do our calculation of the pension. And then here in the B028, we calculate from the /P02, we calculate a wage type /540. At this moment, when the /540 has been created, you stop with processing your own processing. From that moment on, it's going to be picked up by the payment process again, and you make your BT from there. So the bit in between that is specific for the voluntary additional pension. You then, in the payment, am I in the right place here? Nope. No, it's the one underneath. So here, all the way at the end of the payroll schema, we have the second call of the function BCAPF with a calculation rule, the B056. In that calculation rule, I can quickly show you, we use the amount equal to D. This is the new parameter, /540. This means it actually reads it takes into account the V0 split in picking up the wage type. If we didn't do that, the link with the info type would be lost and we couldn't make the payment. From this, we then create a payment of, you can see here, it's 66.67 euros that's paid. This is the details of the payment that was stored in the info type. But you see this amount, I don't know if you remember, but the original amount was 100 euros, and here it's 66.67. So this is a new functionality we've added, which could potentially be used for multiple purposes, but we so far only store it for the support it for the voluntary additional pension. Okay. Then for the voluntary additional pension in specific, the amount from the voluntary that a person contributes to the voluntary additional pension is subject to a 30% tax reduction, or it enables a 30% of that amount can be reduced the taxes. This needs to be limited to a maximum per year in combination with the normal additional pension. So if you have a pension scheme as an employer, then if the employee also has a voluntary additional pension scheme he wants to contribute to, then the combination of the two need to be taken into account for the 30% tax reduction. There are some other rules, like there is a yearly limit based on the income the previous year, but that amount is again limited to a minimum of the amount that's stored in this constant. Okay. In total, we use 3 different wage types to do this calculation, and the amount stored to these wage types can be, again, as I showed earlier, configured in the table T5, F9, and FW or FX, because these wage types are filled via the same operation I mentioned earlier. So this is a flow of how the calculation works. We read the info type. We then also have our customer specific, or in this case, the voluntary additional pension specific rules. After these rules, we store the amount in the /540 and the payment after that is standard SAP supported. Are there any questions at this moment in time? I don't actually see the chat at the moment. If I don't hear anything, I'm assuming we go ahead.
I'm not seeing, nobody so far has typed any questions.
Okay,
so yeah.
Thank you. So then we had a fairly large implementation to do for the second pension pillar. For customers, this will probably seem quite small. 4 new fields to be declared in the DMFA for certain employers that are that have a second pension pillar, the way the DMFA have specified it. If this amount, these amounts need to be declared, the amounts you need to have a monthly scale salary and a monthly additional scale salary that needs to be declared. It's mostly used by public sector companies that also do Capello declarations. These 3 amounts, the 1220 to 1222, are mapped via these 3 wage type groups in the T5F 99FW. But we also recognize that there might be other mappings already done for Capello, and as a result, we've also introduced a buddy that can be used to map your income via the buddy to these fields. The values that are calculated are then stored in the BEVL, and the amount need to be triggered in principle once a year unless employees have stopped working and then are rehired. And it's actually quite a complicated set of rules that the DMFA authority, the SI authorities have released for this. So there's been quite a lot of time gone into the development of the rules for triggering this declaration, but it's automated, fully automated. So if these fields are mapped, SAP will make sure that they are declared at the right time. Something to bear in mind though, if you are a company that needs to declare this, you need to set in the T5B1S, you need to set a switch to indicate that your company needs to declare this amount. If you don't do this, nothing will happen. So that's something important to bear in mind. Then, FinProf exemption checks. There have been more implementations, with regard to tax exemptions. For instance, in the last period, there's been a change in the legislation that allows employers to transfer shift exemption rights from one employee to another. So if one person has a certain amount that of taxes that can be exempted, but they don't have enough shift themselves to exempt the amount, then it can be transferred to another, the amount of shift that cannot be exempted from another employee can be transferred to this employee. The rules have been there for a while. Unfortunately for us, we cannot fully automate this solution because the exemptions, the total amount of exemptions is only known at the end of the payroll when you run the FinProf. So we cannot decide how much can be transferred from one employee to another. Therefore, we decided to put a check in the FinProf program to basically just to indicate that there is an amount of shift left that can be exempted from your taxes by moving it to a different person, or and also there is an amount of tax left that can be exempted. So I can show that briefly in the system for a person. No, I'll go there. So I've just taken one employee here, but in principle, you run this for your whole company. At the end, on this screen, you here have a list of errors. In this case, they're warnings. So we here have a indication to say this person in 1 month has taxes remaining, and in another month he has exemption remaining. So it means that with some manual wage types, it is possible to transfer some of the exemption from 1 month to a different month to balance out the taxes, to optimize your tax exemption. We've left it at just this warning to say there is some taxes and exemption left to optimize. It is up to the customer to run a report themselves to find the people that have exemption left and the people that have the taxes left. You can see here there's another message: tax exemption amount for bachelors surpasses 25%. There is another, it's not only for the shift that there is a check that we cannot do in the payroll, also for the tax exemption for scientific research. We can only do the check in the FinProf, and at this moment we cannot make an adjustment to the payroll anymore. Therefore, we decided to put a message in the FinProf to indicate that you have, in this case, too much bachelor exemption compared to master and doctor. Okay. Go. So for the shift exemption, this is a warning, not an error, because it is allowed to leave it the way it is. For the bachelor scientific research, it is an error because you are not actually allowed to leave it the way it is. And we also, you can see here, we've added a few new options in the T5BX4 to map different wage types to the different groups, and these groups are used for the assessment of whether or not something is how much exemption there is and how much tax there is. So if you add your correction wage types to this table as well, then it will take these into account, and you can see whether or not you fully optimized your tax exemption. Then affiliate foreign company tax. So last year there was a change in legislation which forced employers that were paying amounts or stock options or shares to employees via a sister company or a mother company in another country to pay the taxes, calculate the taxes and declare the taxes on this amount. In the past, there was a small gap in the legislation, which meant that this wasn't, employers didn't have to do this, and as a result, if employees didn't declare this, the authorities weren't aware of it. So they've changed that loophole, and as of January 2019, they decided to force the companies to declare this. Unfortunately, this was only confirmed quite late in the year, and it was too close to the bulk tax to the end of the year in time. So what we did is we already provided wage types, an automated calculation. As of it will be possible to automate that calculation. So normal calculation overview. You know, you have your gross, your Social Security comes off, you have your tax calculation. In the tax calculation, we also calculate the exemptions, and you have your total amount of net and taxes and Social Security. However, if you have a foreign company, income from a foreign affiliated company, these amounts are to be taxed normally, but are not subject to exemptions, and they also need to be declared separately. So you'd think, oh, you just do the calculations separately, separate wage types done. Unfortunately, we cannot, because if we calculate the two separately, then the tax rates used for the two calculations would be too low. So what we've done instead is we run the tax calculation twice. We once run it first the normal way, not including the foreign income. And then we run the tax calculation again, including the foreign income, but without calculating any exemptions. And then the delta between the two, the difference between the two, is assumed to be taxes related to foreign income, and the original calculation remains taxes from non-foreign company income. So what does this mean? We had a lot of new technical wage types that we had to create, basically three groups. The /45D to G is to the wage types. They're basically the /451 to 45A equivalent. Then we have our /4E1 to 4EA. This is your /401 equivalent. And then we have the /4F1 to 4FA, and this is your /411 equivalent. So these are the new technical wage types. It is up to the customer to map their own wage types to be accumulated into the /4E1 to 4EA equivalent, and for the /45D to G. Obviously, this depends from customer to customer which goes in where. We do not have accumulation classes available for this, but we do again use the same operation as I mentioned at the beginning, that uses a mapping in the T5F99FX or FW in the form CUML. Once you've done this mapping and you run the payroll, in principle, nothing happens. You first need to set the switch to implement this this functionality. Once you've done that, the system will calculate two payroll runs, two tax calculation runs, and calculate the delta. I'll show you in a minute. The tax wage types are mapped by SAP to the correct fiche. The taxable wage types are not. We cannot use the /4E1 to 4EA wage types for this, because it might be that the /4E1 needs to be partially mapped to benefit in kind, for instance, and partially mapped to normal income. Therefore, in a fiche, therefore it's up to the customer to use their own customer wage types to map, or if you know you only have one type of income, you can map these wage types yourself. But we as SAP cannot assume that this is correct. Okay, so how does this work in the payroll? Let me, probably better to show it in the system itself. Right, so in March, we've given this person a wage type that is mapped in the T5F99FW to be a income that is normal foreign company, but normal income. And then now let's first show the accumulation. I think is that, no, that's here. So we have our B027. In here, we have a wage type called here, test foreign, 2,500 euros. It goes through the calculation rule for that wage type. It does it for every wage type, but and at the end we have a slash 4E1 of 2,500. We then get to, let me close this. We get to this section, and this from here, these three are new. For this calculation, we use the AIT and the ZIT table. First, we make sure that they're clear, so we clear them here. Then we store the IT to the ZIT. We basically make a little photo of the situation before we do our first payroll run calculation. We then do our standard tax calculation. This is the same as the tax calculation that everyone's been used to. And then after we've done that calculation, there's a check to see if you the switch has been set, and if the switch has been set, we again clear the side. We then save the output from the BST00. So for the first tax calculation in the IT, we clear the IT. We replace the IT with the amount that we stored originally here, the picture before we did the tax calculation, and we rerun the tax calculation, but with a parameter FC, which means that we include the foreign company. And the output of this will include all taxes. So that includes the from the normal income. And then here in this section, we create the delta. So I'm not going to walk through every single one, but we calculate the delta between the two calculations, and we store the exemptions and the original taxes in the original wage types, and we store the delta in the slash 4F1 to A wage types. We did it this way to avoid too big the tax calculation, the coding of the normal tax calculation function. Okay, so, and in the end, I'll show you the output as well. So what do we end up with? Here, that was our tax base for the foreign company tax. That's our foreign tax. Then our normal tax calculation is still stored here. And these amounts are then can be declared in the Belgian tax fiche. Okay.
Rutger, sorry to interrupt. I think you just should have a look at the chat, because there was a question from Michael De Giovanni.
Yes, maybe I can.
Just speak.
I can speak. It was just, and we saw it clearly in your example, I think, is that by choosing this way of sequence, so taking first the Belgian taxable and then the foreign, it's clear that you take, in fact, with the progressive scales, you take more, relatively more taxes in the foreign than in the Belgian. So I'm wondering if this rule has somewhere been confirmed by the FOD, or is it something that...
Sorry, I'm not sure I fully understand.
Maybe if you take your RT table again, that you saw your last in SAP.
Hmm?
So you first calculated only with the Belgian taxable. So in this case, 3,205 euro. So you're slash 401, and you have only 531 euro of taxes, which is okay, of course. But then, if you do it together, you take the 2,500 taxable foreign, I think. And then, yeah, of course, you're in the highest scale at that moment, and it will be 50% or a bit less. So I'm wondering if it's not in the disadvantage, mainly when there is a combination of tax exemptions.
In the end, the tax rates are exactly the same for the two. It's the big difference is in the exemptions.
Yeah.
And the fact that the two need to be declared separately. But the tax rates for the employee are exactly the same. So whether or not, the difficulty is the impact of the foreign company income needs to be separate. So if you didn't have that income, the tax calculation is what is normally there. Yeah.
Okay, so that's really a rule. I'm not sure. It was just a question, but that's really the rule that is stipulated somewhere in the document.
It says that the two need to be declared separately. You could try and interpret it to say we do a proportional difference, a proportional split, but then in principle your tax exemption, the maximum amount of tax exemption would be much higher, and it shouldn't be allowed because your tax from foreign income is not allowed to be taken into account for your tax exemption. So if you did the calculation without the foreign tax, you would have a much lower total amount of tax exemption that's possible.
Okay, so you have to take only the Belgian.
This is the safer way of doing it, because otherwise you run the risk in having too high a tax exemption. If a customer were to do it the other way, what you're suggesting could potentially be a solution. It might be that the tax authorities say that's correct or that's allowed, but I don't think that's not according to the wording of the rules suggested is the correct way of doing it.
Okay, that was the question, if it was somewhere confirmed or not, but it's more an interpretation for the moment, so it's not.
It is
100%.
And the main difference is only because both are taxed at exactly the same rate. The main difference is in the tax exemption, and I do not see how you could, if you did it proportionally, how you could argue that that's correct for the tax exemption calculation.
Yeah, you could argue that if you take it first with the foreign and then you add the Belgian, yeah, okay. But
it's even to do it. It goes, you don't see that here, but it goes even further in the sense that if you have income, you know, your amount, that foreign income also goes in your /45D. Yeah, it means that the rate can go up for a premium as well. So it could be that you have a premium that is non-foreign, but non-foreign income, but you have regular income that is foreign. And as a result of that regular income, you get in a higher tax bracket. And as a result, you get a foreign tax calculated on your premium.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For exceptional salary, it's not.
Yeah,
not so
exactly. Year-end
important
premium or
because there
something.
is no exemption on that anyway. So there I think there is no impact. But I'm thinking really in an extreme case where you have a 50% Belgian and a 50% foreign income, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a combination with, for example, overtime reduction that might have an impact then in the end, really on the employees reduction also. If it's really an extreme case, of course, it probably will never happen.
I think in the end, how much you compare is the foreign company tax and how much is the normal tax is not going to have a massive impact. No. To be honest, as long as the rates stay the same, and this is the way it's worded at the moment, it's exactly the same calculation. The only exception is the fact that they need to be declared separately, and the fact that you cannot calculate exemptions on it. Yeah. So that's the only difference. And if you want to try and adjust it in a way that your exemptions are higher, that's
no, but I think it's probably a question that will never happen as this population is normally not even eligible for the exemptions.
Yeah.
So no, okay, clear.
Okay. Thank you, Armin, for pointing out the message. Then finally, the COVID-19 related changes. So there's been a change for temporary unemployment. We've all heard that there's a lot of people that have been put on temporary unemployment in Belgium for at least a period. So for this, the Social Security authorities decided that though we already have a temporary unemployment for superior force, it needs to be declared separately in the DMFA. So we have a new service code 77, and in order to declare this properly, we created a new valuation rule, a new absence, and we mapped the absence in the social risk declaration to the same in the same
risk IDs.
Risk IDs at the other one, because so far there's not been an indication that they need to be declared separately. So that's the COVID-19 unemployment. Then there's also been the reporting of guaranteed wage. For this, there is a need to report the paid salary as guaranteed wage of particular absences. This is going to happen as of Q2 of 2020. This change is, we're still working on this, but it will happen with the DMFA, the glossary changes of Q2. Around about the same time we'll release this, and it will be completely calculated in the DMFA, so there's no need for payroll reruns. Then the final one is the student hours. One of the changes that the authorities released is that the total amount of hours that students work during the second quarter do not count towards the maximum hours per year. This does have an impact on payroll and DMFA. The part for payroll has already been released, but there's still a part in relation to the DMFA that has to be done. And Armin, correct me if I'm wrong, I think also the impact on the info type is going to be done in the DMFA.
Will be delivered with
together with the DMFA.
With the DMFA.
Yeah. So because it uses the same function module, I seem to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So those were the changes we implemented as part of the coronavirus measures. Then coming up, things that we are working on and plan to release in the future. Some changes in relation to the notification tool. Armin, do you want to share
So,
something
yeah,
on that already?
You just said upcoming developments, but here also parts we already have been developed and which
Yeah.
are shipped, but which we would like to bring to the attention of our customers. And especially the notification tool is a large development which we have shipped. And yeah, we haven't had any user group so far to be able to present this development, which was initiated for our German customers. So to make a long story short, take a report like the DMFA where while executing the DMFA, messages are created. So informations, warnings, sometimes errors. So the report has been executed, but how to follow up all the messages which have been created during the report run. So those messages, they are stored separately, and we have a tool later to follow up those messages so that the responsible of the DMFA is really able to see afterwards if those messages which have been reported on the one hand side have been distributed to the correct HR administrators, and that the HR administrators also have checked all the messages which have been raised. So for example, if a student exceeded his maximum number of hours or whatever message. And also we have the possibility to trace there the messages which have been stored on or raised up on the level of the report, which can't be assigned to a corresponding employee number. So this is for messages which have been created while executing a report. On the other hand, as you know, for the DMFA, for example, we also receive back via the notification file information by the SI authority telling us that in the end the declaration was okay or not, but also messages are included on employee level. And we also are able now to store those messages which are coming back from the SI authority, and then also again to distribute them to the corresponding HR administrators to follow up those messages. And later, the responsible for the DMFA just can check his tool and gets a notification, okay, all messages have been processed, all are okay, or if there are any follow-up activities. And this notification tool or the handling of the messages, this has been implemented for the DMFA, for the social risk, for Belcotax and FinProf. But I think it's good to give an overview to our customers, and this will be a longer presentation. And this tool also can be used for customer specific reporting. So cookbook is available and so on, but I really would like to go into details and show this to our customers in one of our next meetings. And I've seen the agenda in the beginning presented by Steve Colemans. So no meeting is planned yet, so it's up to him to decide when we get a new slot to be able to present. So based upon the developments we've done for the notification tool, we also enabled the Payroll Control Center to access this data. So this will be then presented by one of our colleagues, who is the expert on the Payroll Control Center. And Rutger, would you like me to continue? So only the last topic.
Briefly,
so the B2A cleanup tools. So within the B2A manager, which is the tool we use for all our declarations to the authorities, all of our customers are using it for either the DMFA, the DMONA, the Belcotax. A lot of data is stored there. And after many years now of running in production, the tables behind the B2A manager, they are filled and they are growing and growing. And this leads to a performance decrease. And it's clear that once the processes have been finalized, we have to keep them in the system for a certain range of time. But once we pass this, we are able to clean this up, which means remove all the objects, so entries in those tables, remove the TEMSA objects and so on. And we have now developed the
particularly
tool
for larger companies,
yes.
This will be a big benefit. Yeah. And
so
then
this is something which is upcoming. And Rutger, now I would like to hand over again to you.
Yeah, so usability of the BEVL. Basically, recently we've used the BEVL for a certain number of other functionalities within the DMFA. For instance, the second pension pillar. We've added some support for a section in the DMFA that most customers are not using. Longer term, we plan to open up the BEVL a bit further to basically use it for things like the social risk declarations of scenarios that we are not supporting, or other reporting that customers want to add to that same framework. So at the moment, this is not yet possible, but we're going to make some further changes that would allow that to become possible. And then finally, DMFA simulation in the B2A. Currently, you can run a DMFA simulation, but you cannot include it in the so sending a simulation file, a test file to the DMFA to get notifications back. You cannot do that and activate the B2A at the same time. The plan is to implement a new process in the B2A that allows the simulations to be included in B2A as well, which would allow us to also support that in the notification tool and in the payroll control center longer term. So these are plans. It's not we're not there yet, but we hope to implement that in the future.
And another topic which is not yet on this list is that we are also working on the archiving of the fishes 281. So it also will be possible that once you are going to print the fishes for your employees, also to store those fishes to an optical archive and later to access again the fishes which you already handed over to your employees from this optical archive if necessary. So this is also something which we are currently working on and which we could present in the near future to you.
Yep. I see we've run over time a little bit. I'm happy to stay for more questions if there are. But I want to thank you all for attending and for yeah, for any questions that you have. No questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. You don't have to put it in the chat anymore.
Well, I have a question. You hear me? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think his audio.
Hello.
Hello, Pierre. I think it's Pierre who's speaking now, correct?
Yes, I was trying to hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
You.
Okay, I have a question from our HR department regarding a new SI category, 488. Did you have heard something about this?
It doesn't ring a bell straight away. 488. What's this for?
It's for some researchers from the. It was a confusing between private and public sector, and I received the information. We have to change them.
Okay, and what in particular is it that you want to know about this?
I just want to know if you foresee the customizing of, or if we have to do it ourselves.
Can you send me an email and I will get back to you on that. I cannot just by heart. It's not something that straight away rings a bell, so I need to check that and confirm.
Okay, So I will wait until Thursday as far as we have an internal meeting about this.
Mhm.
And we will have more info.
Okay. But send me an email. The email was in the presentation. I don't know if you have it. If not, then I can.
Otherwise, Pierre has my email address, so Pierre send it to me.
That's good as well. Yeah.
Okay, I will send you an email. Please wait up to 2 days up to our internal meeting.
Okay, that's fine. And I will confirm as soon as I can after that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Rutger, the 488 was mentioned in the slides of the trim core.
Okay, I'll have a look.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, no more questions. Richard, first of all, I would like to thank you and also Armin for your contribution to the SAPience platform. I think there's a lot of people happy now that after a long time they have a new update of what's coming. And Armin, definitely we can look afterwards to when we can schedule another session. That's no problem. Thank you. Thank you very much. I look forward to see all of you, if not some of you, again next week when VAB is presenting their implementation of SuccessFactors. And I hope we can stay in touch and build this knowledge community further. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice day. Keep it healthy. Bye.
And thank you for organizing.
Bye.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.